without further ado, I bring in my guy, Bill Bender from Sporting News. Because, Bill, we have got some games to discuss this weekend, man. As bad as last weekend's slate of games was, this weekend's slate of games, it ended up being some intriguing games, but the matchups weren't sexy. There's some really good games scheduled for this weekend, Bill, so I'm very much looking forward to talking about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on as always. I'll let you steer the ship, man. There's so many. There's four, I think, four ranked games between ranked opponents, and we don't have that often. So,
Nope.
four chances for us to get into it starting tomorrow night. Obviously, with I love that Nebraska is playing all their high school games tonight. So those
Are
high
they
school,
really?
yeah, they moved all the.
Oh, wow.
There's 4 or 5 high schools in Lincoln or whatever that play high school football. They rescheduled them for tonight, so all those high school kids could watch Nebraska and Illinois
That's
tomorrow.
awesome.
I think that's fan service. When the Big Ten isn't providing fan service, the high schools in the area are providing the fan service. I enjoy that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That will be the game we start off, Bill. But, you talk about those 4 ranked games. We also have Clemson hosting NC State. It's a very intriguing game this weekend. Georgia Tech at Louisville. So those are 2 games of teams that are not currently ranked, but have been ranked at some point in time this season. That's another game with some intrigue this weekend. You've got, I think there's one other game also. Kansas State at BYU is another intriguing game that I'm looking forward to this weekend. But we're going to preview the 4 games between ranked opponents. And we're going to start with that aforementioned Friday night game in the Big Ten, Bill. You have 3-0 Illinois, who is now ranked number 24 in the country, heading to Lincoln, Nebraska. Illinois so far this season blew out Eastern Illinois in their opener, 45-0. Had a nice win over Kansas in week 2, 23-17, grinded out a win there. And then they're coming off of a 30-9 victory over Central Michigan. None of those games got the splash and appeal that Nebraska's second win of the season got when they beat Colorado 28-10. They opened their season with a 40-7 victory over UTEP. And then last week beat Northern Illinois 34-3. So very similar starts to the season. Both of them played, in the opener, not very good opponents. Both of them have an FCS game under their schedule. UTEP's very similar to Central Michigan, Northern Iowa, Eastern Illinois, very similar programs. And then they both beat a Big 12 team in week 2. And did so convincingly. Well, I guess Nebraska's was more convincing. It was a competitive game between Northern Illinois, or between Illinois and Kansas, Ryan, or Bill. Obviously, Kansas scored twice in the fourth quarter with a field goal to put the game away, but they took a 20-17 lead much early in the quarter. Competitive football game, but Illinois got the job done, Ryan, and was able to go out and earn that win. So now they're both ranked, and it creates a very intriguing matchup. And it was also a little payback for Illinois, who got beat at Kansas last year by 11. So very intriguing game, Bill, and a game that's going to tell us a lot, or not going to tell us a lot. It's an important game for positioning in the top half of the Big Ten. There's no doubt about that.
Well, here's the thing. Illinois is living off turnovers. They I don't know that they beat Kansas without 4 turnovers. They did. They're +8. That's you're the ex-football coach, not me. I mean, turnover margin to me is so important. I watch it at the junior high level. I talked to Grant's junior high coaches about it. They're doing a fantastic job, by the way. But I said, when you watch a junior high game, I can't help myself to watch it like I was watching, as if I were watching a college game flow. And the turnovers are killers. I think they become a little less as you get older, but still +8. Nebraska doesn't turn the ball over. That's my way of telling you that. Raiola's only thrown 1 pick. I would love to hear your impressions of him. Here's 2 things I've noticed. Pretty good against the blitz, and most good quarterbacks are. That's going to, 67.6 completion percentage, not a lot of mistakes. A little bit less under pressure. So why don't you tell me, as I break that down, I would love for you to explain to me, can you watch a quarterback, maybe because I know you've been doing a lot with Riley Leonard, what is the difference between being good at the blitz and not as good against pressure? Is that just because the pressure comes whenever?
No, so being good against the blitz versus pressure. Pressure can mean obviously a lot of different things. A blitz doesn't necessarily mean that the blitz had any success. And one of the plays where you can have a ton of success as an offense is when a team blitz and you pick it up.
Right.
because now you've got some matchup advantages. But pressure can be more of, hey, the blitz worked. And so pressure usually means you're now off your timing. You're off your read. So that's why you're going to see numbers be better versus pressure compared to when a team blitzes. But the other thing, too, is you're going to have more success when you have a good plan. And that's the thing I've liked about Nebraska so far is they're giving Dylan Raiola chances to make plays, but they're not asking him to carry the team.
Right.
And there's a difference. There's a difference between saying, hey, look, this guy's making the plays we need him to make. And, hey, we're asking this guy to go carry our football team. They're not asking him to carry the football team. And that's smart because eventually he'll get there, but he's a true freshman. And I don't care how good you are as a true freshman, you're still a true freshman. We even saw that with Clemson when Trevor Lawrence first came in. I mean, they didn't even start him at first. But when they kind of brought him in, they slowly worked him in. And by the end of the season, he's throwing bombs and doing all that kind of stuff. And that's what we're seeing from Dylan Raiola. And they've got a good plan. He's got good balance short to deep. He's completing 84.2% of his short passes. He's completing 73.7% of the 10 to 19. And then he's 4 and 12 on deep balls, but they're taking their shots. They're not meant to be high percentage plays. But the area of the field where he's attempted the most passes is at or behind the line of scrimmage. So they're giving him a lot of early throws to get into rhythm, get him some confidence, get him comfortable. And that's also something they're doing a good job of to beat the blitz. So it's a smart play by them is don't ask this kid. He's already got enough hype on him. Don't ask this kid to come out there and carry us. We've got a lot of players around him. And there's a pickup they made this offseason. I think it was this offseason. That's been a very underrated portal pickup that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, but I loved it a lot. And that's Isaiah Nayer, the kid that they got, who used to be at Wyoming. And then he went to Texas and got hurt, played, I think, in one game, got hurt. And then
he's given them a real receiver.
Big time.
Like a real, not inexperienced dude that's played a lot of football. Huge.
Right.
Yeah. And
he's a 6'4", 220-pound kid that's got over 1,000 yards in his career. And it's only that low because of injuries.
Right.
So, yes, that was a big pickup.
I think about this game a lot of how I thought about Kansas State, Arizona last week, where the lines dropped. Illinois, I get it, encouraging, but these teams played last year and Nebraska won 20-7. Nebraska had 3 turnovers in the game. I think Nebraska kind of rolls here. And not just that is if they win convincingly, then you start to look at their schedule, and I've already done that. And you're looking at October 26th. As long as they take care of their business, don't have a slip against a Rutgers, they'll be undefeated when they go to the shoe. That's looking way ahead, that's not putting the cart ahead of the, how's that saying go? What do I say?
Put the cart before the horse.
Oh, I'm putting the cart all the way down the hill then, and the horse is still at the top of the hill. So
I want to see how they
handle
handle road games against Purdue and Indiana, and there's still a lot of things we have to learn about these teams. But look, the reality is we said it. You and I have talked about this last year. I'm pretty sure. I know Ryan and I talked about this, and the point was if Nebraska just had competent quarterback play, they're a 9-win team last year. I mean, they would have beat Minnesota last year if they had just competent quarterback play. I mean, he had three red zone end zone interceptions last season. It was so bad. Even Colorado, they lost by 22. You go back and watch that game. There were so many opportunities for that Nebraska offense to make plays in that game. They lost another game to Michigan State by 3. They lost to Maryland by 3. They lost to Wisconsin by 7. They lost to Iowa by 3. That was a team that if you could just get anything from the quarterback, you're going to be a really good football team. And we're seeing that. This is a game where I think we learn a lot more about Nebraska because I think they were a horrible matchup for Colorado because they are good in the trenches and they're well coached. They're not going to beat themselves. And Colorado is none of those things. This is a game where they're facing a team that's more similar in structure. Right. It's a team that's good in the trenches, and it's a well-coached football team. So here's the question I have, though. Does Illinois have the firepower to score 27 to 30 points, which is what I kind of think you're going to need to win this football game? We're going to need at least 24, in my opinion. And so that's really what it boils down to for me. Luke Altmaier's a good, solid, steady quarterback, but does he have what it takes to go on the road and make plays against what is Dylan Raiola gets a lot of the talk and and rightfully so, because he's a 5-star, and the offense is going to get a lot of talk, and they've looked good so far. But this Nebraska defense, Bill, has they've only given up 20 points the entire season in 3 games. And I think didn't Colorado's touchdown come late?
Right. And they have pressure that comes from everywhere too. They have 7 guys with a sack. I was doing some Nebraska look today. He's buried on the bench, but another reason to feel old is they have Willis McGahee 4 on the roster.
Wow.
He has a sack. He has half a sack. So they've got a bunch of depth on that side of the ball, and I just think they get after it here. And I like Illinois. I like Luke Altmaier. Your point well taken about structure-wise in the trenches. We'll see. I mean, that's one when you make these predictions on Monday, like I do, you start to rethink some things, which I do, and that's where I'm wondering. Once you watch the game, you can kind of see, all right, you'll know early. I knew that last week, again, with Kansas State, Arizona. Arizona marches the ball down the field, scores on the opening drive. I was like, well, I'm going to miss this one, and then they didn't score again because Kansas State ended up dominating the trenches, dominating the running game. If Nebraska dominates in the running game with their kind of committee approach, they should be fine here.
That's what I'm curious about. That's the part of the game that I'm not sure that could maybe keep this game a little bit closer than maybe we think, Bill, because Nebraska obviously ran the ball very well in their opener. I think they went for over 200 yards in that game. They went for 149 against Colorado, only 4.3 yards per attempt. They didn't run on Colorado as well as I thought they would. And then last week they went for 142 against Northern Iowa. They only ran the ball 22 times. So that's 6.5 yards per attempt. Illinois' run defense has not been quite as good as I expected it to be. And looked great in the opener, but they gave up 178 to Kansas, gave up 142 to Central Michigan. Can Illinois do enough to slow down the run game and force this to be? Because here's the thing. Nebraska does not want to put this game on Dylan Raiola's shoulders completely. But you can do that defensively if you shut down the run. I mean, that's going to be the key. If you can force Nebraska to be a team that has to throw the ball to beat you, that's where maybe they could get some pressures, and they've got a very well-designed pressure scheme, and the 9 turnovers aren't happening by accident. It's not just terrible play by the other team. They're doing things to create those turnovers, and that's what that defense is geared to do. So that's going to be, to me, the difference in this game is, can they slow down the run enough to make Nebraska have to throw the ball in situations where maybe they don't want to, they would prefer to be more balanced, but put them into situations where we know they're going to throw the ball here. That's going to be the key. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that consistently enough, but that to me that's the matchup to watch, is the Nebraska running attack. Because if they can have some semblance, they don't have to run for 180 yards. It's just some semblance of balance to where Illinois has to keep resources in the box. That's where I think Nebraska kind of makes plays, because I think they can make some plays on the perimeter in the throwing game.
I got Nebraska 28-17. It's right on that. So the line was originally 9. It moves down to 7. I know you're not a bettor, but I do pay attention to line movement. And 3 of the games that we're going to talk about today had that. So I always like when the line moves like that and you still believe that Nebraska is going to win, you just go by double digits. So they're going to win by 10. And I could see a 10-point win here with knowing what Illinois is. If Nebraska turns the ball over and if Nebraska gets in a 1-score game, they could lose. So we need to see them win. They've eliminated all the doubts for me except the 1-score thing. So eventually they're going to be in one of those, and we'll see how they do.
I'm not there yet as far as it being a 1-score game. I don't think that comes this week. I think they're going to have a 1-score game down the road. I think this is a 10-point win for Nebraska. I have 24-14. I could see it being a little bit more. I could see it 27-17. I could see it 30-20. But I think this is a game where it'll be competitive early, score-wise, but you're never going to feel like Notre Dame, Nebraska's in jeopardy. You know what I mean? It's like, so it won't be a game where they wipe them off the map, I don't think, but it also won't be a game where you really worry about,
them losing. Yeah. No panic. Yeah. So
Right. So that's game number 1. So you're 27, you said 27-17?
28-17.
28-17. I'm 24-14, so we're similar on that one. Let's go to the next game, Bill, which is a second week in a row. There's a big ranked versus ranked Big 12 battle. last week, and it's the same as last week. It is a traditional Big 12 team against a Big 12 newcomer, and that is going to be on Saturday when Oklahoma State hosts Utah. I know Mike Gundy's not super thrilled that he's getting this many tough early games in the conference, but this is a big one. The game is going to be played at 4:00 Eastern on Saturday on Fox. Oklahoma State is a 2.5-point favorite. I believe Utah was favored earlier in the week. Correct.
I thought it shifted the other way, didn't it? Oklahoma State still favored?
They're favored by 2.5. I know when I talked about this game a couple days ago, they had Utah up by 2.
It's shifted.
Yes,
and that's where we're talking about the shift in the line and the 40-year-old quarterbacks with.
Did you see the thing where the two starting quarterbacks combined age in this game is greater than it is in the Colts? Is it whoever the Colts play this weekend? I forget who the Colts play.
The Colts Bears.
Okay, so it's Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson. These two guys are like 5 years combined older than the starters in the Colts and the Bears game this weekend.
Well, they both, and there'll be a lot of jokes about that, but the Cam Rising factor is why that line has moved. He had this hand injury. I read Pete Thamel's report that some of it is the stitches in his hand, and that if that pops open in warmups, is he going to have to wear a glove? And these are things to watch. This is one of I know the last 3 games we're going to talk about today. This is one you have to check the remote a little bit or check your guide and be like, oh yeah, Big 12, duh. Utah coming in hot. And you mentioned Mike Gundy. I wanted to say something about him. He's been very loose in press conferences. Every week, every Monday or Tuesday, I'm seeing a Mike Gundy bit. This week he fixed the fridge. I don't know if you got a chance to see that. Last week he called out a reporter in a joking way and said, we don't have to BS each other. The guys were wide open, he's loose. He has a chance to prove that he's the godfather of the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma gone. They haven't run the ball well though, which is the surprising part. They had all the offensive linemen back and Ollie Gordon, the Doak Walker Award winner. This has been more about the old quarterback, Alan Bowman, than it has been their ground game.
You're seeing teams basically say, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us with Alan Bowman. I mean, that's really what we're seeing is they're just coming out. And honestly, I felt like part of the issue for Oklahoma State early against Arkansas is they tried to force the run game into it, and Arkansas jumped all over them. And then once they kind of finally opened it up, Alan Bowman ripped them up. I mean, ripped up Arkansas. They were I thought they were going to lose that game. And they've actually had a pretty good – South Dakota State, beating South Dakota State by over 3 touchdowns is a great win. It's back-to-back FCS national champions. That's like back in the day when North Dakota State was dominating and you beat them by 24 points, which doesn't happen. And then, of course, the comeback went over Arkansas, and then they did what they needed to do against Tulsa last week. So, this is a very interesting team, Bill, because like you mentioned, Alan Bowman's whole job is to just manage the offense. Well, last 2 weeks, he's had to do more than just manage the offense. He's had to go out and make some plays, and they've had to put a little bit more on his shoulders. I'm curious to see what Utah is going to do in this game, to be honest with you, if they're just going to kind of come in with the same game plan. And they have been great. They've been good against the run, but, not great. I'm very curious to see if they're going to be able to kind of to do that this game. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. When you look at, I like this Oklahoma State football team, and I think there's this. I think the Big 12 teams I've noticed a little bit are playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder in some of these early matchups that we've seen. And I thought Utah was okay against Baylor. I wasn't blown away with how they played in that game. You saw, I think, with Kansas State last week against Arizona. It's like, hey, you're coming to our house. This is our league. And I think and I'm reading into things, but I think there's been some comments that make me think some of the Big 12 schools are a little pissed off that everybody's like, it's either going to be Arizona or Utah winning the Big 12 this year. Right. And it's like, hold on a second. Like, what's the Pac-12 done to deserve that type of thing, especially these Pac-12 teams?
Yeah, and it's, for Utah, they play that physical style. Maybe some of that's getting under their skin too, because Utah, as good as they are at home, and they're really good at home, they've struggled on the road in the Pac-12, and they may struggle here on the road at a place that it's the unfamiliarity factor. Again, I keep circling back to last week. Arizona goes into K-State. They've never been to Manhattan.
Nope.
and Manhattan can be crazy. Utah's never been to Stillwater. This will feel like a New Year's Day Six Bowl.
Sure.
This is the type of teams which could be, these are teams fighting for playoff berths and those kind of things. I guess Rising could tilt it the other way, but I'm kind of seeing it Oklahoma State. I do. I think Gundy, this is a statement victory for them. Their games, this is one of the Saturday when we see people tweet about games on Saturdays. This is a candidate for this game is drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely a candidate for that with these two teams and these two quarterbacks. So, but I still think it favors the Cowboys.
Yeah,
I do. I got, what do I have? 31-26. Is that what you have? I bet we're
close. I'm 30-24.
So we're close.
Yeah, I'm going to start finding out your answers earlier so I can change my scores because we're always kind of on the same page.
We've been really close the last 2 weeks on I'm anxious to see our next two though. But
I think the Michigan games are the only ones we haven't had similar scores on so far.
we may and there's probably a hidden reason for that, but because I'm a Big Ten homer. But I think Oklahoma State, maybe some wild, goofy stuff, but I think they take control of this game. They score early. They let it. Maybe they have a little bit of success running the ball. They are going to have to control Utah's physical running game, and I want to see how that works during the game, and if Oklahoma State can actually do that. Because if not, Cam Rising could have a day too.
Yeah, I this game is going to come down to which team can establish the ground game the best, because both teams, despite the fact this being a game between two very experienced quarterbacks, the key to stopping both of these teams is still stopping the run game with both of these teams. And, Alan Bowman has had to carry that team, but let's be honest, Arkansas is not a team that's known for great pass defense the last couple of seasons. And of course they are far better than Tulsa. So, and I didn't think he necessarily, lit the world on fire in the opener against South Dakota. So he was very efficient in that game, but it was 7.4 yards per attempt. He did what he needed to do, but it was more big plays in that game against Arkansas. And there was also a couple balls he threw up where it's like, you're lucky that secondary is not better, or they may pick a couple of those off. That's going to be the thing for me, is he's going to have to protect the football. And when he kind of gets in trouble is when he starts trying to make a few too many plays. And that's him being careless with the football is a big reason that UCF game got out of hand early last year. It's a big reason they lost to Iowa State last season. And he's got to protect the football. And when he protects the football, this offense is pretty good. But I also think that Oklahoma State's they're going to have to try to find ways to get Ollie Gordon going. And I wonder, how much of this is the hangover from the off season where he kind of got some trouble and those type of things. But they're going to have to find ways to get him going and say, hey, look, teams are designed to beat us. So maybe there's some different things they do. Maybe you can try to find some ways to get him the football in the passing game, something along those lines. But they're going to have to figure out a way to get Ollie Gordon going. Because I'll say this, though, Bill, they're 3-0 with a couple pretty good wins, and their star has not played like a star so far. If he gets going, my preseason pick, I still feel good about my preseason Big 12 pick because I was Kansas State was my pick. Oklahoma State was my number 2. They have been the most impressive Big 12 teams to me so far. Utah's been good, but I just think those two teams have been better. So I'm going 30-24. I think Oklahoma State will win this game. I think it'll be a good game. It'll be what we expect. It'll be a legitimate 6-point game, not Utah scores late to make it a 6-point game. I think it'll be a competitive football game, but Stillwater is going to be wild there in Stillwater, and Utah, as you mentioned, has not played well. They've been competitive in some of their losses, but I think the only good road loss win they've had the last 2 years, I believe, was last year over USC, and that turned out to not be a very good road.
Not
win.
A great win at all. Yeah, they just have Kyle has USC's number for some reason. So so we've taken the home team so far. This weekend, and we talked a little bit about this last week with South Carolina and LSU, there are a lot of games where the road favorite is coming in at about a touchdown. And I know the next two we're going to talk about, and even Kansas State at BYU. Your pick of Kansas State is very astute. I think they are the best team in the Big 12 right now. And they go to BYU. We can touch on that a little bit at the end if you want. they're also about a touchdown favorite. So that to me,
6.5.
So a touchdown to me.
Right.
That's you just make your extra point. Kansas State, USC, Tennessee all have chances to make a huge statement this weekend.
Yep.
And I say that in terms of the home team has got to be sitting there saying, hey, man, these guys are a touchdown favorite in our house. So that makes for interesting. It makes for an opportunity for me to be really wrong about our next two games, which we're going to get into next. So I'll let you start USC Michigan because I know
let me just say this real quick about let me just say this real quick about the Oklahoma State Utah game. Even though the line is flipped, when they made Utah an early week favorite, my first thought was, oh my gosh, Mike Gundy is going to do so much with that this week. That is in his wheelhouse for motivating a team. And I don't think he's going to care that they flipped the line. I think that's going to be very interesting.
I do think there's something to be said about him being so loose. He took some criticism for his Ollie Gordon press conference at Big 12 Media Day, but everything else I've been listening to is like, man, he's in good mood.
He's just in that I don't care anymore mode. Like, I think I've earned the right to kind of be whoever the heck I want to be at this point in time. So we'll see how it goes. But let's get into the next game, Bill, because these next two are sort of the quote unquote marquee games that a lot of people are talking about.
Sure.
And the first one we're going to talk about is number 11 USC going on the road to play number 18 Michigan, the defending national champions. Michigan, it'll be 3:30 on Saturday on CBS. USC is a 5.5-point favorite in this game. It's obviously been a week of change for Michigan. They are doing what you and I said 2 weeks ago that they need to do, which is to put Alex Orji at quarterback and just kind of go full 2017 Notre Dame running quarterback mode. Because here's as I said to a friend of mine last night, Bill, you're not going to have very good quarterback play all year. There's not a guy on your roster that's going to be a really good player. So put the guy in that has the dynamic skill set and just lean into it.
And live with it.
Yes, exactly.
Live with that he missed a wide open guy on a streak yesterday.
Yep.
I think had they done what you and I told them to do, they'd be in better position to win this game because he could have had the Arkansas. They weren't going to lose to Arkansas State. They're just not. And they're up 28-3 in that game. Arkansas State scores a couple against the second string, and suddenly people just see the score. What I saw was the team is up 28-3, let Davis Warren make 3 mistakes before they're finally like, okay, dude, we have to put somebody else in.
Yeah.
And Orji did miss the guy, but his first drive coming in. It's exactly what you said, Brian. They just ran the ball right down their throats. And by the way,
you have to account for him. You have to account for him. It just makes it makes it harder to crack. It's like I've talked about this with Notre Dame's running backs. Are Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price both a full 1.5 yards better than Audric Estime? Well, no, but now that you have Riley Leonard, you can't defend them the same way you defended Audric Estime last season. You can't defend Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards the same way when you've got a kid like this, a quarterback. I mean, that's the reality. And I don't know if it'll be enough to beat USC, but this is the only hope you have to beat some of the teams on your schedule. Play great defense, control the clock, and hopefully this kid can make some big plays.
And put Khalil Mullins in the starting role.
Yeah.
Make him your Hassan Haskins. They did that they won a Big Ten championship with Hassan Haskins doing this. As Corum as his change of pace. You got to put Donovan Edwards as a change of pace.
That's all he is. He is. When Corum went down last year, it was the same exact story. Right. When they tried to make Donovan Edwards the feature back, he was just not good. When he is the change of pace guy, and then you ride him when he's hot, which is what they did 2 years ago against Ohio State. They just rode him when he was hot. That's when he can kind of go off, but he's never shown himself to be an every down back. He's a great change of pace back.
Mullins is 7.5 yards per carry, 223 pounds. I'll ask you this, Brian. I'm doing that 25 times in this game if I'm Michigan, and I'm finding out if that USC run defense is for real, for real.
Well, that's going to be the interesting part of this matchup, Bill. And this is the reason this USC defense is the reason that I all offseason told Notre Dame fans this is going to be a much better football team than you guys think it is. This is not the mentally and physically soft football team we saw the year before because of the hire of D'Anton Lynn. That's really what it comes down to. And I thought they had a great offseason when it came through the portal because instead of going after the big names, the Bear Alexanders, the guys that are going to get the money, they went after just good college football players and Kamari Ramsey and and Achille Arnold and John Humphrey and the Nick Wright. I think it's Nick Wright, the kid from Vanderbilt that they got, the middle linebacker from Oregon State, who was a first-team All Pac-12. He's like 6 foot 230. This isn't a future first-round NFL draft pick. This is just a good college football player, and they're playing different. Now, the question is going to be, so far this season, the USC run defense has been very good. They held LSU to 113 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, and held Utah State to 87 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. However, the reality is I don't know that either one of those teams are necessarily great at running the football, because LSU hasn't run the football on anybody so far this season. I mean, their season high right now is 132 yards against South Carolina last week. Nicholls State held them to 68 rushing yards. So they're going to get tested in a way they haven't so far. And this is the intriguing thing is take the Big 12 home or Big 10 homer out of it. And just, this is the thing that we're going to learn about USC and Oregon and Washington coming into the Big 10. And we saw it last year with Washington against Michigan, which is, yes, you guys are athletic. Yes, you're fast. Yes, you can do all these things, but can you play big boy football? And that's the interesting thing. And this is going to be USC's first example of that, because you played an offense in week 1 that's a passing offense in LSU. You just overwhelmed Utah State with talent. I'm not taking anything away from USC. I'm just saying this is the let's find out game for USC.
Both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Yes.
Because as you saw, Sporting News, I don't know if your Irish Breakdown listeners are going to click on this much, but I did a profile on Miller Moss. I talked to him this week. Impressed with him to this point. Impressed that he stayed. That's kind of the theme of the article. That's been written by others, but we kind of delved into that, hey, you had a chance to transfer twice. Why'd you stay? And he said, well, I got to compete with Caleb Williams for 2 years. I got to learn from Lincoln Riley for 2 years. And I'm a Los Angeles kid who basically, he's an LA kid. His mom teaches there. And now he's gotten a chance to thrive. And I think in Lincoln Riley's offense, this has been different because he's not the exotic playmaker that he's had. Even Baker could make plays with his feet. He just a get the ball out on time guy. And I'm wondering, Brian, I don't think this Michigan defense is very good for what they have. Like, can I say it that way? Like, they have the talent now. They haven't been very good. I think they can be very good. They got overwhelmed by Texas. Maybe some of that was they were on the field too long. Yeah. This is a big game for Wink Martindale. Yeah. Because there's getting some doubt on the Michigan message board types that it was all Jesse Minter. Forget Connor Stallions. I'm not going to do that one-liner jokes about him, but Jesse Minter's crushing it in the NFL Chargers. Michigan had a couple breakdowns late, even with the twos last week, that you're kind of like, okay, they don't know where they're at. I think it's a big game. Michigan got embarrassed by Texas's offense a couple weeks ago. Can they impose their will on this USC offense?
That's going to be the key, because Michigan's dealing with a little bit of what Notre Dame is dealing with right now on their defense. Now, Notre Dame's defense has been much better than Michigan's, in part because they didn't play Texas. But they looked better against Texas A&M and Purdue than Michigan has looked at any point in time this season on defense. Correct. To be honest with you. Because you think about that pick 6 against Fresno, I believe, what was the score at that point in time? It was like, 20-10? I mean, they're getting ready to go in and score and make that a much more competitive football game. Now, last week's game was not nearly as close as 28-18, but the defense couldn't really put the game away either. And you're talking about, you've got these guys that are considered star players. You've got Mason Graham in 3 games has a half a tackle for loss. And Notre Dame's having the same issue with Riley Mills and Howard Cross. They're just not playing up to expectations. And that was the thing with Michigan, was you expected that part of your team to be really good. And to your point, their defense has been good relative to how they stack up against everyone in college football, but it hasn't come nearly close to being expectations, because the expectation coming in was, hey, they're still going to be great on defense, which is going to help them win a lot of football games. Well, they haven't been so far. And I wonder how much of it is they feel this pressure of, we have to stop people because we know, because we went against it all spring and all fall, our offense isn't very good.
And we saw that in the opener. Like you said, it was, I think Fresno got it down to I think it was 16-10, something like that at that point. It was getting dicey. Then Texas overwhelmed them a little bit. I don't think USC will overwhelm them the way Texas did on offense. I think Texas is in the national championship weight class, regardless of quarterback. And I'm not sure USC is that. And I think Miller Moss is pretty good. And we're going to find out how good in this game.
The question is this, Bill. Can Michigan put pressure on the USC offense? Can they create disruptions? Can they get Miller Moss out of rhythm? The thing about him is he's not an elite talent, but he's a really good up here. He's very accurate. He's a good decision maker. You get him off, kind of throwing off his back foot and things like that, he's going to make some mistakes of something that LSU couldn't really do a whole lot of, and it's something that Louisville can do in the bowl game. And that's going to make this an interesting game. My other question is, I have some question marks about Michigan's secondary outside of Will Johnson. And USC they don't have right now necessarily anyone that's playing like an elite receiver. I think they have some elite talent. I think Deuce Robinson's a really elite talent. I think that Zechariah Branch is obviously an elite talent. There's some elite, but they're not necessarily, no one's like lighting the world on fire. Their leading receiver right now is Lake McRae, their tight end, who's got 9 catches for 137 yards. But there's a lot of weapons on that offense. And so I think my concern about Michigan's defense all season was, if you're a team that's just going to run the football all day, I don't know that you're going to be able to do that against this team. If you're a team that can spread the field and get Michigan's secondary in space, especially since Rod Moore got hurt, that's where I think Michigan's vulnerable. And the thing about this USC team is, because there isn't a star that you can put Will Johnson on and say, stop him and you got a shot to win this football game, you've got Lake McRae at tight end. You've got Kyron Hudson, who's made some big-time plays. You've got Kyle Ford. You've got Zechariah Branch. You've got Jacoby Lane. You've got Deuce Robinson. Woody Marks has got 6 catches out of the backfield. You got Mekhi Lemon. There's a lot of options. That's the danger for me, and Texas took advantage of that to a degree. That game should have been way worse. Like, my score prediction was almost close because Texas missed a lot of opportunities to blow that game open. And I don't know that USC can do that, but I do think if USC can protect Miller Moss, there's some definite advantages they have at skill on the perimeter, because that was arguably the biggest loss Michigan had, is they had a really good veteran secondary last year opposite Will Johnson. The corner, the kid from UMass they lost, I always forget his last name. It's Wallace. And then how do you say the Nichols? Sainristil? How do you say his last name?
Mike Sainristil.
Sainristil.
Yeah, he was the key to that
was a
secondary.
huge loss.
Yes.
And then, of course, you also lose Rod Moore to injury. Keon Sabbs now balling at Alabama. That was the biggest loss that Michigan had last year, and I think USC is going to expose that. So when I look at this game, I love what D'Anton Lynn's doing. I think Michigan can have a shot at running the football, but their line's going to have to play a lot better than it has so far. I'm very curious to see. The thing that gives Michigan a chance is this, I think, if they're smart coaches, is going to be a very different looking game plan than what we've seen so far. And that's going to – if they try to force this kid into the offense that they were doing last week and just throw a couple more quarterback runs in there, they're going to get destroyed this weekend. If they say, hey, we're going full – mobile quarterback. I mean, we're just quarterback runs, play action, bootlegs, all that kind of stuff. We're going to lean into this kid. Then I think that's the only hope Michigan has to keep this game down, because if they can put some long drives together, keep USC's offense off the field, not let them get into the rhythm, they have a shot to stay in this game. I just don't think they're going to do that. I think this is a game I have USC winning 27-13. I think Michigan's going to struggle to move the ball and score. It's going to take this kid a couple games to get going. To your point, I think you nailed it. The mistake they made was waiting 1 week too long. It was obvious to everyone on the planet after the first game that Warren wasn't the quarterback, and they waited till after the third game to make that move, and that's a mistake. And I think there's some legitimate concerns that you have about the defense. I had a friend of mine when Wink Martindale was hired. He said this is going to have a very similar impact for Michigan that hiring Brian Van Gorder had on Notre Dame. Now, I don't think Wink Martindale's that bad of a coordinator. His point was this guy has no ability to coach college football players, in his opinion. I don't know that I know enough about Wink Martindale to say that, but so far you're seeing that, because you're seeing guys that just – this is a Michigan defense that never beat itself, ever. And they're doing that a lot. in these first 3 games. And I don't think that miraculously gets fixed against USC and what Lincoln Riley does.
I think this falls under, I have 28-21 USC, so close. And I think it's going to end up feeling like what we both said about they should have done this a week sooner, because I could see USC being up, I don't know, like 21-7 at half.
Mm-hmm.
And then Michigan battles back with it settles in, and then, oh, it's 28-21. Why did we wait so long? And that's going to be the thing. People will pile on Michigan after because Michigan's probably out of the playoff race by then.
Sure.
Unless they win out.
Yeah, they'd have to win the Big Ten at that point in time.
Because
which they can, because one of their 2 losses is a non-conference loss.
And maybe they reset their season. I had said on some level what Michigan's going through is a lesser version of what Florida State is going through. You lost that much NFL talent. Your quarterback play isn't good. You've had some questionable coaching decisions. And in fairness to Michigan, they've caught 2 top 10 teams in the first 4 games.
Right.
So Florida State caught 3 unranked teams and wasn't ready for that. So
I would, however, argue that had they played Georgia Tech in the opener and BC in week 2 and then Texas, what would Michigan's record be right now?
They'd be 0-3.
Yeah.
They'd also be 0-3.
Right.
So, and I still don't think they care. I mean, one of the things they're coming off that national title. It'll start to get real once Oregon does it.
Yeah.
Once this becomes a repetitive thing. And then when they lose that trump card on Ohio State on November 30th, then they're going to use it until they're going to have it. No matter what their record is, they're still going to show it.
Michigan fans, talk as much trash as you can to Ohio State between now and the end of November, because once that game is over, you will not have a lot to say.
No, there won't be much left. So, I got 28-21, and I do think it's a little bit different than Texas, but kind of the same conclusion at the end of the book where you're like, Michigan's offense just isn't good enough. Yeah. And we start to talk about USC in terms of, okay, they got through that one. Are they the second best team in the Big Ten? I think they are.
There's some similarities between Texas and USC and how they're built. Texas is just better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like the matchups that Texas presented are the same ones that USC presents. Texas is just better, mainly because I still think Texas is better in the trenches. I don't think USC's offensive line has not impressed me so far. I think it's going to get better and better and better. They've got a couple young guys in there, but that's where Michigan's going to have. If Michigan's going to have any chance in this game, it's that battle right there. It's going to be getting pressure on the quarterback, forcing Miller Moss into some mistakes, forcing him into situations he hasn't been in so far. But I think that's going to be the key in this game, Bill. So far we're on the same page as far as who wins. Michigan needs this to be a close game, because a close game, I think they can rally around the new quarterback. If this is a game that's a convincing loss, I could see the season starting to spiral a little bit the same way it did for Notre Dame in 2016.
And then it could become a Jack Tuttle conversation or Jaden Davis conversation, and they could just play quarterback shuffle the rest of the year.
Which would tell me the head coach doesn't have answers.
Correct.
That's what it would tell me. All right, let's get into the final game, Bill. And this is, to me, the one, I would say, in my opinion, the most intriguing matchup of the weekend because of how I think. Well, I don't know how this game is going to go, to be honest with you. That is number 6 Tennessee at number 15 Oklahoma, pair of 3-0 teams. 7:30 on ABC. Tennessee is a touchdown favorite on the road. I don't know that we really know how good Oklahoma is. Tennessee has not played an incredibly tough schedule. I think NC State's overrated. I've said that a lot, but you still beat a team by 41 points. They're not that overrated where you absolutely annihilated them. And then, of course, their other 2 opponents were just awful. But they're doing what they're supposed to do. And that is absolutely dominating their teams. Oklahoma, on the other hand, had a very convincing week 1 win over Temple. In their last 2 games, Bill, they've had to kind of grind it out a little bit. They were only up 5 halfway through the 4th quarter against Tulane. You could argue, if you want to feel better about yourself as an Oklahoma fan, well, we beat them more convincingly than we did the last time they came into Norman, Oklahoma.
This is true.
So maybe we're true. Better. And then obviously a very ugly win over a not very good Houston team. And so you have to ask yourself, okay, is Oklahoma ranked 15th because they're one of the 15 best teams in the country? Or are they ranked 15th because they were ranked that high in the preseason, but they're not really that kind of team? We're going to find out this Saturday because they are playing a team that comes in probably playing as well as any team in the country right now, taking out the context of who they've played, just how they've played. Because the thing that doesn't get talked about enough so far, Bill, in my opinion, is the Tennessee offense gets all the love, but the Tennessee defense so far has been really good.
And their pass rush is very good.
Yes.
And their pass rush is good without James Pierce has not made an appearance yet on the sack column.
That's scary. They held Chattanooga to, I guess it's just Chattanooga now, to 227 yards. They held North Carolina State to 143 yards, not rushing yards, passing yards, total yards. And they held Kent State to 112. Now, I don't think any of those offenses are necessarily great, but NC State's a much better than 143 yard per game team. That's what makes this team dangerous. And there's also the angle of Josh Heupel, former Oklahoma quarterback, who was fired as the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma instead of firing the brother, who was just a disaster of a defensive coordinator. They fired the offensive coordinator. And it's worked out pretty well for Josh Heupel since then. Obviously ended up at UCF. Now he's at Tennessee, and he's got that place rolling, Bill. So it's not just a top 15 game, old school SEC team against one of the new additions. There's a lot of layers to what makes this game intriguing, Bill.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. It is, and we're going to find out if Tennessee's awesome. So everything I said will like USC. Okay, I'll put it to you this way, and I'll let you answer. I think there's a better chance Tennessee blows the doors off Oklahoma than there is USC beats Michigan. And I realize how risky that sounds because I love this Tennessee offense. I know emotions are going to be high for Josh Heupel. There was a tweet going around this week about Heupel. It was an ESPN feature when he played, which makes you feel old because you're like, that was 24 years ago when they played Kansas State. Corey Kirkpatrick did the feature. I watched the whole thing.
How about him calling Brian Bosworth evil? I was
like, did watch
man.
it.
Yeah,
yes,
like, dude, chill, man. Like, what the heck, dude?
Who did he say was the good Oklahoma guy?
Josh Heupel.
Heupel, good. Brian Bosworth, evil.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the perception of that has changed in 24 years. He's the sheriff of Fansville now.
Well, he stars in Christian movies because he's become a born again Christian. So it is interesting. But yeah, back then the perception was very, very different.
You did watch it to the end. I'm very proud of you. And I think this Tennessee team's pretty darn good. They're putting up 700 yards of offense. We will find out with Nico, how do you handle the road game? He was total control he was either Cheez-It or Citrus Bowl against Iowa, total control against NC State. In an environment in Oklahoma where he can get rowdy, they've been waiting for this one. Is he in total control in this game? If he is and the running game works, it could be blow the doors off of the Sooners. It could. I don't know that it will. It could.
The interesting part of this matchup is I don't think Oklahoma has much of a chance to win. I think what Oklahoma's hope is that they can keep the score down enough to where maybe they can force some turnovers that then lead to points because that's what Oklahoma's the strength is right now. I mean, think about this. The best part of Oklahoma's team is their defense right now. And that's not meant to be an insult entirely. But their defense has played very well so far. They held Temple to 197 points, gave up 318 to Houston, only 658 on the ground, 279 yards of offense to Tulane, who moved the ball pretty well the week before against Kansas State, and almost pulled off that upset the week before. Had 491 yards of offense against Kansas State, went on the road, and Oklahoma held them to 279. So that was an offense that came into that game rolling, Bill, averaging almost 8 yards of play and moved the ball and scored the ball on Kansas State, who showed last week that they've got a pretty good defense as well. So they're going to have to. It's almost kind of like, does the dam break at some point in time, where your offense just can't move the ball, can't score, and eventually Tennessee's going to break that thing open? That's the question I want to have. Or can the Oklahoma defense not just hold water for a while, but force mistakes? That's going to be the key because they've got 23 tackles for loss through 3 games, Oklahoma's defense so far. They've got 11 sacks in 3 games, and they've got 7 different guys that have registered sacks so far. Their pass defense has been pretty good so far. Oh, again, they have not faced anything close to what they're going to face this weekend from Tennessee. And I'm not talking about Nico. I mean, the Nico hype is like, okay, let's let the kid like play somebody good. And let's, kind of take some of let's not put too much on this kid so far. But the thing is Tennessee's not asking him to carry the team the way that I think the hype is that he's playing, because they're coming out, they're running the football. He's got a lot of good weapons around him. I mean, his last 2 games, he's thrown for 211 and 173 yards. He's averaging almost 10 yards an attempt because they're coming out, they're showing balance, they're running the football, and then he's hitting some big shots down the field to a very talented group of receivers. I mean, Tennessee so far is averaging over 300 yards a game rushing.
Yeah, they're good. And Dylan Sampson's really good.
Yeah.
He was averaging 8 yards per carry.
Yeah.
Not to interrupt you, but I have a question as usual. So Jackson Arnold and him are development-wise probably not all that far off each other right now. Right. Jackson Arnold's had his moments. He's a running threat too. These guys were 3 and 4 or 2 and 4 in that class, according to Rev. Of course, Arch, and we're going to have a little time to talk about Arch before I get out of here, but have to. And I think the key here, though, like I guess I'm trying to ask you, what can Jackson Arnold? He's going to be asked to carry a little bit this week. Can he do it? Right.
He has to do that more than Nico does, because his supporting casting is good. No, he can't do it. And number one, Jackson Arnold, he was overrated. Now, I don't mean overrated meaning he's not good. I think he was a good quarterback. He was more, to me, a top 150 kind of guy, low 100 type of guy than a top 50, much less a top 10 guy coming out of high school. He was a good quarterback. Nico was a guy that was intriguing because he had a little bit of boomer bust to me, because he had tremendous skills, but he wasn't a great processor early in his career, didn't do a very good job of reading defenses and things like that. Got better as he got older. And then, of course, learning under Josh Heupel, whose system is not overly complex. It's not a lot of full field reads and things like that. And he's really a perfect fit for what they do. Jackson Arnold is a sophomore, basically making his fourth start this weekend, as just the guy, is being asked to carry a team that he's just not prepared to carry. He needs to be a complementary piece in this offense. And unfortunately, because of how bad the offensive line is, and my guy Ryan Roberts tried to warn Oklahoma fans during the summer, and they lost their minds on him on social media. We talked about this offensive line is going to be really bad. And yes, they have one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, but you're replacing 5 starters and your talent's not great. That's the issue, is they can't run the ball very well. They're going to have a very tough time protecting the quarterback this week. And I just don't know how Oklahoma scores enough to win this game, even if their defense plays great. And that's why I worry that in the second half, if they're even able to stop Tennessee early, can they do it for 4 quarters if your offense isn't doing anything? That's going to be tough sledding. So they're going to have to force some turnovers and get points on defense. And when I say get points on defense, not just pick sixes and stuff, but it's like force a turnover to 25 going in, where your offense doesn't have to do a whole lot, right? And I don't know that they can do that for 4 quarters. I don't think this matchup. I've watched Oklahoma the last couple of days. I told people at Irish Break that I haven't really watched Oklahoma yet this year, but watching them last couple of days, it's their offense is in trouble.
Their defense
and they miss
good.
Jeff Lebby as well.
Their defense can create turnovers. It's the same thing. This kind of brings all of our picks into full circle. They're also +8, like Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
They created a lot of those turnovers in the opener against Temple, which I watched cover to cover.
They're awful.
And Temple's bad. Temple's one of the top 5 worst teams in the country. And so I mentioned James Pierce earlier. If your listeners aren't familiar with him, possible number 1 pick. 6 pressures this year. I don't want to insult your listeners. I hate it when people say, well, I apologize for that. But if you haven't watched James Pierce play, he's pretty damn good, is what I'm going to say. 6 pressures, hasn't got a sack. Very good player. And this pass rush is going to get to Oklahoma a little bit. It's going to land a little bit. It's going to take the crowd out of it. If it does, they're wearing their Stormtrooper outfits. I saw that tweet. I didn't know Stormtroopers had like the creamsicle stripe on them, but that's nerdy conversation for another day. I got Tennessee. I think you're going to have it more than I do. I got Tennessee 34-24.
What's interesting is James Pierce has 6 pressures on the season. He's only got to the quarterback once,
right,
according to Pro Football Focus. That's not going to continue. for the entire season. And this is the week I think he kind of like guys like him.
He knows that they're watching.
Yeah, exactly.
He knows they're watching this
exactly.
week.
This is exactly, and it's going to get ugly. And it's not a very good Oklahoma offensive line. I have it 38-17, and I don't think it's going to be that close.
Okay.
I think the Oklahoma defense is going to be able to create enough stops early to, keep it somewhat competitive early on. Meaning, it's going to, what it's going to remind me a lot of? It's the Michigan-Ohio State game the first year they played. And I think Ohio State was up like 13-10 at halftime. And a buddy of mine called me talking trash, saying, like, you said Ohio State was going to blow Michigan out. And I was like, have you been watching the same game I am? Because this is about to get ugly. Because it was a game where it was not really as close as the score dictated. Michigan's defense made a couple stops, and you just kind of felt like Ohio State's about to roll. And that's exactly what they did in the second half. And that's kind of how I see this game being and playing out. Is it may be close early, but Oklahoma's defense is good. It's not that good to where they're going to shut this team down for 4 quarters.
Tennessee let's say they win by your score or more.
Mm-hmm.
Are we putting them in the Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State realm at that point?
Yeah.
I think they are the one team that could be that.
I do to a degree. I thought Oklahoma is a 4-loss team this year. I had them as a 4 potential 5-loss team this year. So even if and I wasn't high on NC State, right? I didn't have them as a preseason top 25 team. I think I had them like 5th or 6th in the ACC. I was not buying the Dave Doran hype. He's never good when people expect him to be good. He's always good when they
that's 100%.
You know what I mean?
But
when I look at this matchup, Bill, it's like Tennessee's doing what good teams are supposed. If they win the way that I have the score, or even if they win the way you have the score, it's like, okay, yeah, they didn't beat a great team yet, but they're doing what good teams are supposed to do to inferior opponents. They're saying you're not on our level. Well, Georgia didn't do that last week against Kentucky, and I would argue that Oklahoma is certainly better than Kentucky. So if they win this game convincingly, I think you need to put Tennessee into that conversation. I would just say I'm not going to full throat say, okay, y'all, this team's a title contender until they really play a top team, because we saw this before 2 years ago with Tennessee, right? We saw this team come out and start, what were they, 8-0, beat Alabama on the road, beat Florida, beat LSU, blew out LSU on the road. Remember that game? And then they said, well, this team, and they play Georgia, and then Georgia just steamrolled them because they were able to get physical with them. That's still going to be the question mark about Tennessee, but here's the big difference between this Tennessee team and that Tennessee team. This Tennessee team is a much better running team, and they don't need the quarterback to be part of that. And that's what makes this team a lot different so far. Now, if they're able to run the ball on Oklahoma, then that's going to tell me their run game is legit.
And I think Nico Hendon was obviously more experienced than Nico at that point, and they had dudes at receiver at Hyatt that could take the top off a team. But I think that running game is just going to go a long way. And one thing to your point, I have to do an article about this at some point. Georgia looked ordinary last week because Carson Beck didn't have a running game behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Then he started to look ordinary.
Yeah.
Is Nico that if he doesn't have the running
No,
game?
I think Nico's a kid that he's going to make some mistakes, but with the offense they run, he'll hit a couple big throws.
Correct.
And he's a mobile. He's not a runner, but he's mobile. He's got a little Trevor Lawrence to him, in my opinion, where he doesn't have to run. He's not a runner, but if you force him to where he has to use his legs to beat you, he can.
You're the third person to make the Trevor Lawrence, at least not even. It's just tangent.
There's a lot of similarities
that tells me right there that
tall,
kid's special,
long release, right? Very long release, big arm, athletic but not a runner, and those are all similarities. Now, does Nico have sort of the it factor that Trevor had? We're gonna find that out, right? Does he have the accuracy and some of those things that Trevor had? We're gonna find that out, right? Does he have the supporting cast around him that Trevor had at Clemson? We're going to find that out. But I think for this game, I think Tennessee is just a better team. Their defense is as good, if not better, than Oklahoma's. Their offense is way better than Oklahoma's. And yeah, take the comp. Okay, yeah, like it's like people say about they beat Purdue. I don't care who you played. When you beat a Power 5 team 66-7, you're really good. Just like NC State, you beat a Power 5 team 51-10 on a neutral field. You're really good. And now we get to find that out for sure, because perception-wise, this is going to be a big win for Tennessee.
Right.
I think at the end of the year, we're going to look back and say, well, maybe Oklahoma wasn't as good as we thought. And then we really evaluate them on some upcoming games against, Alabama. They've got Alabama. Obviously, you play Arkansas on the road 2 weeks, but you got Bama at home. You got Georgia on the road. Those would be the games that tell them. But this game, if they win this game, they have one of the most favorable SEC schedules around. Yes, they get Bama and Georgia, but they get one of them at home. They don't play Ole Miss. They don't play LSU. They don't play Texas. So this could be a thing where if they can split, if they win this weekend and split with Georgia and Alabama, they're probably in the SEC title game. And so this is a big win for them too, because their schedule looks really nice coming out of this game if they're able to win this game. No question.
And it definitely does. And, before I get out of here, probably go for about five more minutes here.
Well, let's get to a couple of the other things you wanted to talk about.
Well,
Bill.
I said Arch. One of my assignments this weekend will be to watch Arch. I watched him Saturday night when he came in. I know it's UTSA, and I know it's going to be UL Monroe on Saturday night. But I looked at my wife after his first throw, and I was like, or his touchdown run. I was like, hey, it's like watching a Manning, but he can move.
Well, it's
pretty impressed.
It's like watching his dad, if his dad could throw like Eli. That's kind of how I look at it.
Say that again.
It's like watching his dad, if his dad could throw like Eli.
Like Eli, yeah.
Because everybody keeps talking about how he's the most athletic Manning. And I'm like, no, he's the most athletic of the Mannings you guys know about. But his dad was a scholarship wide receiver at Ole Miss. And Archie was a very athletic guy in his career. Eli and Peyton aren't athletic, but Cooper and Archie are. And obviously Arch got his athleticism from that part of the family. Not
and Archie, as somebody pointed out to me this week, Archie had to run by necessity when he was in the NFL. Some of those highlights you see of Archie on the old NFL films, he's scrambling around and making plays. I was impressed when Arch got in the open field. He juked UTSA safety Elliott Davison. I mean, right out of his shoes, and he's gone. Sorry, Elliott Davison, wherever you're at, that I had to name drop you there. But, I mean, he put him on skates, and then he threw the deep ball well. Granted, Ryan Wingo was 40 yards wide open, but he hung in the pocket, made the throws. I'll ask you this. Let's assume he plays well Saturday. He will. Let's assume they squeeze one more week out of him. Mississippi State plays well. They go to their bye week. They come out, they play Oklahoma, Red River. Lost last year in Red River. Quinn Ewers comes out. There's 2 3-and-outs to start the game. What happens?
You go with Quinn Ewers. He's your quarterback.
That's what I think, too.
I mean, look, here's the deal.
It's going to get weird, though.
Now, perception-wise, fan-wise, all that, fine. But if you look at this from a coaching standpoint, Quinn Ewers is your quarterback. You have to keep Arch ready because Quinn Ewers has never shown he can stay healthy for an entire season. So you keep Arch ready. But Quinn Ewers has done nothing to lose that job. And I know that Arch is the hype and all that, but you're trying to win a championship this year. And you're going to go with the guy that has proven you can win those games. Look, I like Arch a lot. I think he's, I had him as a top 50 player coming out of high school. I think he's got ability. He's needs this time to grow and develop as a quarterback with some of the things. He's a little bit more like Eli from an accuracy standpoint than he is Peyton, early in his career, at least he was in high school. Quinn Ewers is your starting quarterback, and Quinn Ewers has played pretty good football so far this year. And it's a whole different animal coming off the bench against UTSA or anybody else than it is to be the guy where the entire spotlight all week is on you. And that's what not enough people understand. And we're having this debate at Notre Dame, and we have this debate every year. Man, this guy was so good as a backup. What's happening? Well, Will Howard is an example that I point to. He looked so good 2 years ago. He wasn't the starter. Adrian Martinez was. There was no pressure. He was the guy that came off the bench. Well, then you go into the next year, and he's the guy, and he's the focal point. He's the guy teams are designing game plans around. He's the guy that teams are designing their coverages around. He's now getting asked all the questions. He's got to do this. He's got to do that. Guess what? He wasn't as good of a quarterback. We see that all the time. And now I think Arch is going to be a very good quarterback, but he's not going to look like he did against UTSA. And let's also not forget, this is not last year's UTSA or the year before's UTSA. This is also a team that lost by 49 points to Texas State the week before. Same amount they lost to Texas, right? This is not a very good football team. They barely beat Kennesaw State, who's not good.
What happens if they lose to Oklahoma?
If they lose, then hey,
does it get weird?
It does, because it's like you're our starter because we think you can help us go win a championship, but you couldn't go beat a pretty mediocre team. It also depends on why they lost. Did they lose because Quinn didn't play well? Then you start to have a conversation. But Quinn should not. I'm not you don't lose jobs because of injury. I'm a big believer in that, especially at quarterback. But if Quinn comes back and he's not playing well, then you're going to struggle. Because here's the thing: once you make that turn, there's no going back, man. You make that move and Arch doesn't play well, there's no going back to Quinn because he will now he's not going to be the same quarterback, in my opinion, coming off the bench. So
first round quarterback benched amid for Manning in week 8. I mean, the headlines just
for a team that's undefeated, right? It's just not going to happen. Sarkisian's not an idiot. He's not going to bow to the pressure of the media and people looking to generate clicks with this and that. Quinn Ewers is their starting quarterback. And as long as he continues playing like he has the last 2 years, he will continue to be a starting quarterback. Because, like, what you can't do with Quinn Ewers is if he has, let's say they play Oklahoma and he doesn't play great and they win by a touchdown, you don't bench him because no quarterback should have that pressure on him where if you don't play phenomenal every weekend, we're going to bench you. You know, every quarterback's going to have that. So then if Arch goes out the next week and he doesn't play well, do you go back to Quinn Ewers? No, he's your starting quarterback until he gives you a reason not to be, which is go out and lose a football game. You know, and you're the reason why. So that's how I see that one playing out. It's going to be great talking points all year, but Quinn Ewers is the team starting quarterback. I mean, this is a guy that's beaten Bama on the road. This is a guy that, you know, has gone to a playoff game, and we saw his grit last year in the second half, bringing that team back against Washington. This is your guy until it. Now, here's where I would say this, Bill, and I know you got to run. If Quinn is banged up, having a guy like Arch gives you more time to let him heal. And that's the conversation I'll have with Quinn. Hey, Quinn, listen, we're going to sit you for another week because Arch can handle this. We need you healthy because we can't win a title without you. And that's one of the greatest benefits of having a guy like Arch Manning is you don't have to rush him back to, you know, get him healthy, get him right, and then bring him back at the right time. So that's going to be the key. But I don't care what Arch Manning does this weekend because this is the thing I always say. Well, how do you know that Quinn wouldn't have done the same exact thing this weekend, right? I mean, let's say Arch starts and he goes out against Louisa Monroe this week, and let's say they go one more week to let Quinn get healthy and he rips up a terrible Mississippi State team. How do you know Quinn Ewers wouldn't have done the exact same thing if he was healthy, right? To two bad football teams.
It won't get weird till they get to Oklahoma, and if that goes wrong. And it is kind
of. And then what are you going to do? You're going to start Arch the next week against Georgia?
Yeah, that's a
welcome to college football, cuz. I mean,
you're going to start this one. I think there's some irony in that. Texas coming into the SEC, and they are probably going to get to start a Manning, and the SEC is going to love that because they'll get to re-air all those documentaries and have the Mannings show up in Starkville in the state of Mississippi.
Again. Yeah.
That will be on the loop that week. But no, I totally agree with you on all points. Arch is fun to watch. I'm going to build a lot of momentum into him for next year, and I laughed that he had higher Heisman Trophy odds right now than Travis Hunter, who's played 379 snaps. So that is the way some of us college football fans behave, Brian.
That is very true. Whatever's going to get us the clicks, baby. That's how it is, right? Isn't that how some of these people go? But hey, Bill, thanks for joining us, man. Hey, did you give your final score for this game?
I thought I said
prediction Oklahoma
34-24.
34. Okay, and I got 38-17.
So we were somewhat the same all week.
Shocker, the Michigan USC game is the only one that we didn't see eye on. I think I have it 27-13, and it's not going to be that close. And if anything, I could see it being even wider. Yeah.
And I got it the other way, whereas like with that line moving down. But again, Big Ten homer admitted, so we'll see how it goes.
But hey, you presented good reasons why. We'll see how it goes.
And we have a ton, like I said, so a couple things. We have at Sporting News, Miller Moss feature. I talked to Tim Tebow this week about Billy Napier. That'll be up tomorrow, and we'll have everything getting ready. Tim Tebow, by the way, the nicest human being on the world. He will not say a negative word about anybody. Can't get him to do it. I tried to get him to say.
You want to get him to talk bad about somebody, bring up Notre Dame.
I will do that next time. But he would not say anything negative about Billy Napier. He went into some of the things he thinks Florida needs to fix, and that's a pretty long list. But we're ready for week 4, and love this segment. I hope your listeners do too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, thanks for being with us this week. Everybody, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. So make sure you subscribe to this podcast and the CFB Nation podcast. You guys had your week 4 previews up at the CFB Nation podcast as well today. Earlier in the week, you guys had your review of week 3. And so you'll definitely be able to get those. So make sure you subscribe to CFB Nation. Tonight, 5 o'clock, it'll be IB Nation Sports Talk. I'll be back tomorrow with a Notre Dame mailbag. And then, of course, Saturday, Notre Dame postgame show. Bill, did you happen to make a prediction for the Notre Dame Miami Redhawks game this weekend?
I got them winning by a lot.
Okay.
It was so I got them covering again. I think
Mhm.
they're just in got to please the beauty pageant part of this.
Mhm.
They got to go out. They can't waste any time. I think I had it at like 42-10, something like that.
It's close. Mine's
And
45-9, so we're close.
that
Dang it, man. All right, this is concerning.
So we aren't that different, aren't
Right.
we?
I'm 40,
Right.
except when it comes down to Michigan games.
Right.
That's the only time we're different. And you're a Big Ten homer. I hate Michigan, so I think there's a little bit on both sides.
Probably a little bit there, but everything else,
Yeah,
I think Notre Dame rules. I think,
Yeah.
Despite some injuries on the offensive line, I think they get the passing game going a little bit. And the beauty pageant part is at work. They do need to take care of games like this and not waste. And it's a MAC opponent, so I think they're going to take it out on them, much like Penn State's going to take it out on Kent State.
Oh, that's going to get ugly.
That one's going to have a big number too.
Yeah, it's going to get ugly. Bill, thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great, awesome rest of your day. We'll see you guys next week. We're going to have some fun games to preview next week as well, Bill. For Bill Bender, I'm Bryan Driskell. Ryan Roberts was with us earlier. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and we'll see you again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.